Masechet Menahot Daf Mem Vav Amud Aleph, 9 lines down. We are up to Amar Rav Yudar Rav Hanina Rav Huna Bar Rav Yeshua. We said earlier the possibility that waving the Qurban connects the bread to the lambs. He says, "V'hakiktiv kodesh yilu Hashem leKohen." Pasuk says you should be holy to Hashem and for the Kohen. But hatenu faktiv. That's after the pasuk wrote about waving. Upligi b'namas v'Rav Akiva. Still, it's mahloket whether or not it applies. So it must be that waving has no factor in the attachment of the bread to the lambs. The Gemara says, "V'tamech batat nufa v'lo batat shahita." What does that mean? Only after the waving, not after shahita. Of course, it's after shahita as well. Elamai, the Gemara had to explain it. Me'ikraka is referring to before shahita. Umay kol shil Hashem kohen, what does the pasuk refer to? The vash safolo kohen, anything else will be given to the kohen, meaning after the korban. Hachanam davar safolo kohen, so also will be given to the kohen after the waving. No proof. Shahita also zikah. One second, you're telling me slaughter can attach it? But meaning v'stira ad shelo shehataha nifras lahma. That was slaughtered. Yani the korban was slaughtered and the bread broke. Bring a new one and slaughter it. If the tzad was slaughtered after the bread and then the bread broke, Hadam Yisrael throw the blood for the shlamim. And you can eat the meat like a shlamim. We didn't throw the top. He did not do his mitzvah for a tzada. V'halechem pasul, and the bread is pasul. Nizrak Hadam, the blood already been thrown, and then the loaf broke. Torem min hashalim malpros. You separate the loaf from the whole one for the broken one, and it counts. So now what? Actually, so now we're saying if before it was slaughtered, the bread left Yerushalayim, you could bring it back inside and you slaughter it. But after you slaughtered it, the bread leaves Yerushalayim, then you could throw the blood. Did not count as a tzada. The bread is pasul. The blood already thrown, and then you let the bread left. To him, you can separate from the loaf that's inside for what's outside. Third case, if the bread, if before the tzada was slaughtered, the bread became tameh, bring a new one and slaughter. After slaughtered, it became bread tameh. Hadam is direct, and you throw the blood for the tzada. You eat it. We didn't say it does count as tzada. Because tzitz can get kapara for the loaf that become tameh. But the bread that became pasul cannot be eaten. Nizrak hadam, the blood already thrown. You separate from the tahor for the tameh. Now, what do we see from here? If we tell me that slaughtering creates an attachment, if it already became attached to slaughtering, the bread should become pasul by leaving Yerushalayim or breaking. Therefore, the should also become pasul. So, where would the blood help you? The Gemara says, or Korban Todah is different because the Torah calls it a shlamim. Shlamim kiravim below lechem, just like shlamim can be offered without bread. After that, kiravim and lechem to Todah can be without bread. Mar b'yirmiyah. Im tibis lomar to nuva al zazikat. From telling me that waving creates an attachment. Avar lechem, if you were to lose the bread after you waved it, avdu kivasim. The lambs also have to be destroyed. Avdu kivasim avar lechem. The lambs were lost after the waving, you have to destroy the bread. Something that waving does not do anything for attachment. If someone brought the bread and lambs and then waved, and then the bread was lost and you replaced it, you have to re-wave it or not. So the lambs are lost, you for sure need to re-wave them. Is there a question? When the bread's lost. So according to Benanas, no question, because since the lambs are required, the priority, you definitely need to waive it. Was there a question? The bread's the main part. Do we say since the bread's the primary, you need to waive it because no? Maybe since the bread's permitted factor is the lambs, and that stayed the same, maybe you don't need to waive anymore. Teku, no answer. Why is the two shlamim lambs make the bread kadosh and are required for it? And how come by the 7 lambs, the bull and the rams of the olam, they don't make the bread kadosh and are not required for it? Amalei says simple. Since the shlamim lambs and bread are connected to each other through waving, that's why they're connected. But to have that bread not attached to waving, and still it makes it required and essential for each other. Where it says Ella Ketuda, Talk Michael Tuda. After the Shamim and connected and required of Hashem regarding the Shalechem as well. When I say Midami, how can you compare? Hatam because Vahim Ahrin Baze. In the case of Tudah, there's no other korbanot that come with it. Hacha the Ikaz Vahim Ahrin regarding the Shavuot, the korbanot, there are other korbanot that come with it. The Kachu and Nevdani. So therefore, the Shamim and law should make the bread kadosh. The Gemara says, okay, fine. Ella be Ke El Nazir. The lamb law, the Shamims are of Shavuot are like the Nazir's ram. My El Nazir Afagav the Ika Zohim Achrin Shamim Hud Mekacha, even though by the Nazir ram there are other korbanot besides the Shamim that a Nazir brings when he finishes his Nazirut, and it's the Shamim that makes the bread Kadosh. Midachrin alone, nothing else. Hachanam Yoshan Shatu regarding Shamim as well of the Shavuot, it's only the Shamim that makes the loaves Kadosh, even though there's other korbanot. I know that by the Nazir that it makes the loaves Kadosh. Tanner it says ותעיל יביא עסיס זבח שלמים על השם על סל המסות למועד שהסל בא לחובה לעיל. ושיטת העיל מקדשן, the slaughter makes it kadosh. לפיכך שהחתוש לא לשמו ולא קדשה לכם. Therefore, if the ram was slaughtered incorrectly, not for the right purpose, the bread is not kadosh. תנברן, שתי הלחם הבאות לפני עצמן יונפו. The two loaves of bread that come by themselves are waved. And then you have to leave it overnight so they become pasul. Then you could burn it. Okay. Manashach. The problem is 1 second. Either if your brother loves to be eaten, they'll let it eat. Either if you want to burn it, let's leave it out there, burn it right away. Why have to wait overnight? When is the ready to be eaten? You're worried why eating it now? Because in next year the lambs will be available to them, and they will say, last year we didn't have the bread without the lambs. Now I'll eat it well. Eat the bread without waiting for the lambs to be slaughtered and blood thrown. The reason and the problem is they won't realize that last year you were able to eat it because there was no lambs. And that's why the blows by mutar. But now there would be lambs. The lambs are making it mutar. Therefore, because of that suspicion, we say don't eat it yet. Marabah says that I know this concept that miduraita the breads can be eaten by themselves. Technically, the Talmud says, Ha'id ben Bukhri Biavne testified, Kol Kohen Shishokil Inochote. Any Kohen who gives Machzis a shekel, right? We're getting a Kitisa. There's no Avira. He's supposed to give Machzis a shekel. It's not true. Any Kohen who does not give sins, meaning he's required. So not that, okay, you could give, no problem. No, you're required to give. Why do the Kohen think they're patur? Because they learn the pasuk is b'chol min hat kohen kalit kilo bechel ho'il v'omer u'shelechem b'lechem apanim b'shelanu hen. Since the omer korban and the shelechem and lechem apanim are theirs, he'ach nechlin, they can't eat it. Right? Meaning Bnei Israel, the Kohanim said that basically if they were required to pay the Machzis shekel, they'll be technically owning these community korbanot, which means they will not be able to eat it. So it must be they can't give, but therefore we say you can. Either in the case that they come with the korban, what do you mean how can they eat it? We know that Kohanim can donate it to the and bread and eat the bread. So what's the problem? Maybe some independent breads, meaning no bread, no lambs yet, and they just bring the bread. But still they're worrying how they're eating it. The must be that the shelechem themselves they could be eaten. Because the fact that they don't want to eat it now because this factor must be that without that factor, it would be mutar. That's the proof. Rashi is not proof. Amar says the lamb really comes with the sakrabat. And then you ask me a question. Oh, what about the tudah and the bread? It's not a question. The bread of Tudah is not considered mincha. Shtei alechem ikru mincha, but shtei alechem is mincha. Shneimar pasuk says, "Behakri vechem mincha hadasha laHashem." So we see from this Mishnah that the shtei alechem are eaten only when it comes to the korban, and no proof that the shtei alechem come by themselves; they're allowed to be eaten. Yosef Amar says, "Lo'lam zefat." Really, the shtei alechem that by themselves are supposed to be burnt. Behind the time that the reason why we don't burn it is because we don't burn pasul Kochim on Yom Tov. The word says, Midami, how can you compare? In the case of a korban pasul, a pasul kochim, That's not the way it's supposed to be done. That's why we don't do it. But over here, it's supposed to be burnt. But anyway, we should burn it. A part of it's like we burn the bull and the Gory Yom Kippur, which I burnt. Or it's okay, I'm myself. We're worried that maybe the lens will become available later on that day after you already burnt the breads. That makes sense as long as the time to bring it is available. But after that, overnight, you should burn it. Meaning after that point, you should be able to burn it. Why leave it overnight? Just wait for the nighttime, for example, the beginning or before nighttime. When we say that it overnight, doesn't mean actual overnight. After the time to bring the animals. Once you can no longer bring the animals, then you burn the bread. Rav Amar says, they're supposed to be eaten. We're worried at Rabba's concern that I'm worried that if you eat it next year, they'll won't realize and they'll eat it before the lambs are brought. But not from Rabban's reason, but rather for a pasuk. Pasuk says, just like bikurim, you bring by itself without a korban. As well. From there we learn, just like bikurim are eaten. There also are eaten. Ben